I hope I'm not interrupting anything, said Lindsey. He was, of course, but Aubrey would never tell him so. Not at all. To what do we owe the pleasure? The moment the phrase escaped his throat, Aubrey wished he could snatch it back. It wasn't a pleasure for a mill owner to drop in on his employees without warning. He ought to have asked what he could do for Lindsey. That would have demonstrated a work ethic beyond sycophantic flattery. But Lindsey didn't seem to notice the subtle difference. Is Mr. Jennings available? He asked. The question caused Aubrey unaccountable disappointment. He refused to reflect on why this might be. No, sir. I'm afraid Mr. Jennings went home some time past. And the other clerk? Lindsey asked before Aubrey could offer his services as a replacement. Mr. Smith, wasn't it? Is he in? Smith had gone home for lunch and never returned, though Lindsey didn't need to know that. Neither did he need to know how the thought of Smith as an acceptable substitute, preferable to Aubrey himself, made Aubrey queasy. Still, he replied in a level tone. No. To his astonishment, Lindsey grinned. Perfect, he said, and took the liberty of hanging his hat on the coat rack. I'd hoped to make a request of you particularly, and in private. As he talked, he advanced across the room until he came to Aubrey's desk and seated himself quite casually on the corner of it. Aubrey, meanwhile, refused to accept this version of reality. Lindsey couldn't possibly mean what he supposed. Life didn't work that way. Surely Lindsey spoke in jest. Yet, as Aubrey looked into his eyes, the two blue eyes of a man who'd given him an expensive, if thoughtless, gift, along with words of praise and a request to be called by his Christian name, he found a shy, hopeful expression. I would be delighted, said Lindsey, if you would do me the honour of accompanying me to the theatre. Aubrey felt a slight pressure on his thigh. He glanced down to find Lindsey's hand upon it. He buried his initial reaction of wild, inappropriate glee deep down where Lindsey would never see it. Yet while he could hide his joy from the outside world, he couldn't escape it within the confines of his own mind. His imagination presented a whirlwind of vignettes. Lindsey's fingers brushing the arm of his jacket as they walked to the theatre. Once inside, Aubrey taking advantage of the darkness to rest his hand in Lindsey's lap. He and Lindsey sharing a cab home after the show. Lindsey undoing the buttons of his waistcoat. At present, Lindsey's hand remained on his thigh. Aubrey reined in his fantasies, lest Lindsey encounter more than he'd expected there. Or perhaps precisely what he'd expected. Aubrey swallowed hard. Regardless of his tempting offer, Lindsey remained Aubrey's superior. If Lindsey tired of his companionship, Aubrey would be tossed back in the gutter. The alternate possibility that Aubrey's own interest would wane, and Lindsey would demand continued affection as a condition of his employment, didn't sound any more appealing. And if by some miracle a third path appeared, as the stupider parts of Aubrey's brain hoped, wherein he and Lindsey remained inseparable in mutual bliss until the end of their days, Aubrey couldn't conceive of a world in which he became anything more than Lindsey's pet clerk, a filthy little secret. No. He'd moved on from that role long ago. He had no intention of returning to it now. Then again, considering all he'd accepted from Lindsey, it looked as if he'd returned to it already. Realising this uncomfortable truth left Aubrey with only one respectable option. He took a deep breath, gathering courage along with air, and spoke. Mr. Althorp, I am not entirely comfortable with the position of your hand.